The letter was unopened for 7 years. It sat untouched in a dusty drawer until this morning, when the storm hit. Lightning cracked open the silence, and in that jolt, Samuel's heart gave out. His children, 3 strangers in adult bodies, stood over him, numb, distant. They hadn't spoken to him in a decade. Not after the divorce. Not after the betrayal. But now, in the echo of a thunderclap, he collapsed before them like a tree that finally gave up. His youngest, Ava, knelt beside his body, fingers trembling, whispering, "Is he gone?" And then, the drawer slid open. Inside that letter, addressed to all 3 children, written in their father's scratchy hand. No one dared move. No one breathed. Until the eldest, Mark, reached out and said, "We should have opened it years ago." The letter fell into his palm like a curse. A curse that could have been lifted. A truth that waited too long. Mark read the first line out loud. "If you are reading this, then I am no longer the man you feared." Silence. The room felt like it was listening too. Ava covered her mouth. Lena took a step back, eyes hard. Samuel's voice, through ink and paper, was soft yet heavy. "I failed you," the letter continued. Not in silence but in cowardice. "I was afraid to love loudly. I punished your mother for things I never had the courage to say." Mark paused, unable to continue. The paper trembled in his hands. Ava said, "He knew. He always knew." Lena whispered, "Then why didn't he stop?" The storm outside softened. Inside, a different storm brewed, one made of guilt, longing, and regret. The words of a dead man had more weight than years of yelling ever could. They finally heard his voice, when it was too late. Lena stared at the letter like it might burn her fingers. Her voice cracked. "He left us, and now he wants redemption?" Ava didn't respond. She couldn't. She remembered the nights she waited for a birthday call that never came. The missed recitals, the silence. "This letter doesn't erase what he did," Lena said, voice rising. Mark finally spoke. "It's not about erasing. It's about understanding why." His tone wasn't defensive. It was broken. In that moment, none of them were adults. They were just kids again, wounded, raw, reaching backward. The letter became a mirror, reflecting everything they refused to admit. The part of them that still wanted a father, still wanted closure, even if it came wrapped in death. And in that quiet space between accusation and truth, the house felt colder. Ava stepped forward. She took the letter from Mark's hands and turned to the second page. Her voice quivered as she read. "You were my light in a world I had darkened myself. I didn't deserve you, but I never stopped loving you." The weight of those words knocked the air from her lungs. "Why couldn't he say it?" she whispered. "Just once, when he was alive." Mark said, "Because he didn't know how." Lena scoffed, but even she turned away to hide her tears. The letter didn't fix anything, but it pierced something. Grief. Dip. Love. Loan. Love. Regret. All tangled. Samuel had waited until death to speak. But now his silence screamed through the words he left behind. Ava held the letter like a lifeline to a man she never truly knew. The storm finally passed. Raindrops clung to the windows, like old regrets that refused to fall away. Samuel's body was covered now, the coroner silent in the background. Mark placed the letter on the kitchen table. "We should finish it together," he said. Lena didn't reply, but she sat. Ava sat too. 3 broken souls around a letter that could not mend everything but maybe could start something. "Do you think he meant it?" Ava asked. Mark nodded slowly. "I think he meant every word. He just didn't know how to say them while he breathed." The room exhaled for the first time in hours. Not healed, but cracked open, just enough for the light to start seeping in. Ava sat alone that night, the letter folded neatly beside her cup of tea. Her fingers traced the creases like they might reveal a secret not yet spoken. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Inside, her chest stormed. She whispered to the silence, Why did he wait? The house echoed back nothing but her own breath. Her father wasn't just absent, he was emotionally exiled, a ghost who lived among them but never touched their lives with warmth. She remembered the night of her school play, how she scanned the audience, only to find an empty seat in the front row. She'd smiled anyway, pretended it didn't matter. But it did. I needed one moment, she said aloud, just one where he saw me. The letter tried to explain, but her memories still screamed louder than his apology. And that silence, that's what made her feel hopeless. Not his death, his distance. Mark sat on the porch, cigarette burning low between his fingers. He hadn't smoked in years, but tonight it felt earned. He stared out at the darkness, his mind louder than the wind. He remembered being 13, dragging a broken bike home after crashing into a ditch. Blood on his knees, tears in his throat. Samuel had opened the door, looked once, and walked back inside. That moment stayed with Mark longer than the scar. He never asked for help again. "You taught me silence," Mark muttered to the dark, "and I wore it like armor." The letter didn't undo that, but it cracked something. "You feared love like it was weakness," he said, his voice shaking. "But I just wanted to be your son." A pause. Then a whisper. "Was I ever enough?" And for the first time in years, Mark cried, and didn't hide it. Lena couldn't sleep. She walked barefoot through the house, each creak in the floorboards sounding like her childhood. She entered her father's study, a place she once feared. The walls still held shelves of untouched books, the scent of pipe tobacco long faded. On the desk sat an old photograph, Lena age 6, perched on Samuel's shoulders, both smiling. She picked it up, staring at it like it belonged to strangers. "You loved me," she whispered. "I remember this day." Then her voice hardened. "But you stopped showing it." She turned the photo over. There was a note. "Lena, my fire, never let them tame your spirit." Her breath caught. "Then why did you?" she asked the empty room. The photo trembled in her grip. All these years, she thought he stopped caring. But maybe he just didn't know how to keep going. The tragedy wasn't hate. It was fear. The next morning, the three siblings sat quietly in the kitchen, the letter between them. No one spoke for a long time. The silence felt sacred now, not hollow. Mark finally said, "He failed us, but he didn't hate us." Lena nodded slowly. "That's what makes it worse. He loved us. And still, he left." Ava added, "He didn't know how to love out loud." The realization cracked something open in all three. They weren't just grieving a father, they were grieving the childhood they imagined, the one they pretended they had. "We built walls," Mark said, "but he built his first." Lena touched the letter. "And left us locked out." They all looked at it now, not as a message, but a key. Maybe too late. Maybe just in time. That morning, grief changed shape, from pain into understanding. Ava stood alone in the backyard, barefoot in dew-soaked grass. Birds were beginning to sing. The letter pages fluttered in her hand. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "I forgive you." Not because he asked, not because he deserved it, but because she was tired of holding it, tired of being defined by what wasn't said. In the quiet morning light, she felt lighter. Mark joined her, then Lena. No words, just presence. And for the first time they stood together not as wounded children, but as adults choosing to break the cycle. "Let's not become him," Lena finally said. Mark nodded. "Let's be what he couldn't." Ava folded the letter one last time and tucked it into her coat. "We start now." And in that still moment, hope began, shy, trembling, but alive. The next few days were quiet, but not peaceful. Grief made room for memories, and with memories came questions. Ava wandered into the attic, a place sealed by time. Boxes lined the walls, childhood drawings, broken toys, forgotten letters. Among them, she found a folder marked "Court." Inside were divorce papers, dated the same month she stopped hearing her father's voice. Tucked behind them was a photo of her mother, young, fierce, defiant. On the back, in Samuel's handwriting, "She never let me love her the way I knew how." Ava sank to the floor. It wasn't just about him leaving, it was about two people who never learned how to stay. The silence in their home had started long before he walked out. She finally understood. The fracture wasn't sudden, it was inherited. Ava whispered, "We've been living their unfinished fight." Mark sat with his Uncle Frank the next evening. Samuel's older brother. A man of few words and fewer emotions. But tonight, Mark needed history. Was he always like that? Mark asked. Frank leaned back, eyes fogged with decades. He wasn't always distant, but he learned to be. He paused. "Your grandfather was brutal. Samuel once locked himself in the cellar for 3 days just to escape the shouting." Mark was stunned. "He never told us." Frank chuckled bitterly. "He didn't know how. Our family taught survival, not sharing." Mark felt his ribs tighten. His father hadn't been born cold, he'd been frozen by legacy. "So we inherited silence," Mark said. Frank nodded. "And you have the choice to end it." For the first time, Mark saw his father not just as a man who failed, but as a boy who had never been shown how to succeed. Lena stood outside the courthouse steps, staring at the building where her parents' marriage unraveled. She had no reason to be there, only the need to see it. She imagined her mother walking out, papers in hand, fire in her chest. She imagined her father, alone in his car, watching her leave. For years, Lena had chosen sides. Her mother, the survivor. Her father, the deserter. But now, it all seemed blurred. "Maybe they both broke," she whispered. She opened her journal, one she hadn't touched in years, and wrote, "He left, yes. But she closed the door first." A painful truth. No villains, just two people crushed by their own wounds. Lena looked up at the courthouse again, the same place that tore her childhood into before and after. And she finally forgave both of them, not because they earned it, but because she no longer wanted to carry their war. That evening, the siblings gathered in the living room, each holding something they'd found, fragments of their father's life. Ava placed the attic photo on the table. Mark set down a wrench from the garage, something Samuel always kept clean. Lena laid her childhood journal, pages marked by fear and longing. They didn't speak for a while. Each item told a story, each story once silenced. Ava broke the stillness. "What if he wanted to fix things but didn't know how to begin?" Mark added, "What if we stopped waiting for people to say the right things and started forgiving the wrong ones?" Lena whispered, "Then maybe we wouldn't waste our lives in echo." The room didn't heal, but it breathed. For the first time in years, it held truth instead of tension. Later that night, Ava returned to the letter one last time. One sentence had stayed with her. "I hope you remember me as more than my mistakes." She read it again, softer. "I hope you remember me." She closed her eyes and tried. Not the anger, not the distance, but the time he danced with her in the kitchen, the one birthday he got right, the silent hug after her car accident. Small things, incomplete things, but they existed. "I remember," she whispered. And that was enough, for now. She folded the letter and placed it inside a frame. Not to worship it, but to remind herself that even broken fathers can leave behind seeds of truth. It was up to her to water them with grace, or let them rot in resentment. She chose grace. It wasn't easy, but it was hers to choose. 2 days later, a sealed manila envelope arrived by courier, Samuel's final request sent before his death. It was addressed to Mark. Inside, a copy of Samuel's will and an enclosed letter marked private, for your eyes only. Mark read it in silence, then read it again, slower. His hands trembled. The truth was written in blunt ink. "Lena is not your full sister. She's your cousin. Your mother raised her because mine couldn't." He couldn't breathe. The air felt thinner. He remembered how fiercely Samuel protected Lena, even more than the rest. It wasn't favoritism. It was guilt. She doesn't know, Mark muttered. She never knew. That night, he sat in the dark, holding the truth like a lit match, one that could burn them all, or light the way forward. The storm inside wasn't over. It was just beginning. Mark told Ava first. She dropped the spoon she was holding, the clatter echoing across the kitchen. What do you mean, cousin? He handed her the letter, watching her eyes race across the page, her mouth falling open. He lied to all of us. Mark shook his head. No, he protected her, her mother, our aunt was unstable. He and Mom took Lena in when she was 2, made a deal never to tell. Ava collapsed into a chair, mind spinning. So all her anger, all that pain, it came from a place she never even knew existed. Mark nodded. She was grieving a man she thought was her father. And he was, but not by blood. Ava whispered, "This will destroy her." Mark looked at her, voice low. "Or it will free her." And that was the weight of it, the line between pain and release, drawn in silence. Lena found them on the porch, her face tired from another sleepless night. "What's going on?" she asked. Mark stood. Ava tried to speak but faltered. Mark stepped forward. "We need to tell you something. About Dad. About you." Her eyes narrowed. "What is this?" He handed her the letter. She read it. Then again. Her hands dropped. Her voice was flat. "No, this isn't real." Silence. The wind picked up. "Why would he hide this? Why would he lie?" she said, pacing. Ava said gently, "He didn't want you to grow up feeling unwanted." Lena shouted, "So instead I grew up feeling unloved." Her breath caught. Was any of it real? She stared at the sky, searching for something to ground her. But the sky didn't answer. Only silence did. The kind that follows explosions. Lena didn't come back inside for hours. When she did, she walked past them without a word and sat alone at the piano. An old upright their father never let them touch as kids. She opened the lid slowly, pressing a single key. A soft broken note filled the room. She whispered, "He used to play this. For me." The sound wavered. "And I thought it meant he loved me more." Her fingers hovered above the keys. It wasn't love. It was guilt. Ava approached, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Maybe it was both. Lena's lip quivered. "How do I forgive someone who lied to me my whole life?" Mark answered quietly, "By realizing he lied because he didn't trust the truth to keep you whole." She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. And that was something. That night, Lena opened an old box in her closet, one she hadn't touched in years. Inside were drawings, cards, tiny mementos from a father who wasn't hers by blood, but had loved her like she was his. She unfolded a crayon drawing, Lena and Daddy on the moon. She was 5. He'd written, "You'll always orbit my heart." Her throat closed. "You didn't have to be my father to be the only one who ever felt like one." She whispered to the quiet, "I was yours. I still am." The betrayal remained, but alongside it came something else. Gratitude. Then pain could live with love. It always had. And in that moment, Lena stopped searching for what was real and chose to believe what was true. Not by blood, but by bond. Ndiku. The house was nearly empty now. Samuel's belongings packed, the air thinner, quieter. Ava walked into her father's bedroom for the first time since his passing. The bed was made, his cologne faint in the fabric of an old sweater on the chair. She sat at his desk. On it, a small cassette player. A note, "Play me, when you're ready." Her hands shook as she pressed play. His voice, tired, soft, more human than she remembered, filled the room. "If you're listening, it means I'm gone. And it means I failed less than I feared. I want you to know, I saw you. Every day, I just didn't know how to show it." Ava covered her mouth, tears falling freely. "You were my joy. I just didn't know how to protect it without hurting it." Ava whispered, You could have said this while you were alive. But she also knew he never felt truly alive enough to try. Mark stood over Samuel's grave, a folded paper in hand. It wasn't a letter. It was a list. Times he needed a father. Times he got silence instead. The day he left for college. The day he got fired. The night he almost ended everything. You weren't there, he said aloud. But I still became a man. Without you. He placed the paper on the grave. And I'm done carrying your absence like it defines me. He took a deep breath. I forgive you. But more than that, I release you. It wasn't a performance. No one else was there. Just wind. Just earth. And a man standing not to mourn the dead, but to bury the pain that lived too long. As Mark walked away, the air felt lighter. Not because the past changed, but because he stopped letting it hold the pen. Lena found herself in the church Samuel once attended alone. She'd never seen him pray, never saw him kneel. But now she sat where he used to, in the last pew. A worn Bible sat open on the bench. Inside it, a photograph of the three of them. On the back, my reason to believe. Her throat tightened. You didn't talk much to God, did you? She whispered. Maybe you didn't think you were worthy. She looked up at the stained glass window, sunlight bending through blue and gold. Neither did I. She bowed her head, not in surrender, but in understanding. We were both lost, she said. And maybe faith isn't in religion. Maybe it's in choosing to love someone even when they don't love you the way you need. Her tears were quiet this time. Cleansing. Oh, wow. No one needed to see them. Not even God. That night, the siblings lit a fire in the backyard. Something Samuel used to do, but never invited them to. Around it, they sat in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because what needed saying could only be felt. Ava finally spoke. He left pieces of himself in each of us. The parts he was too afraid to live. Lena nodded. We are his story now. We decide what the ending looks like. Mark reached into his pocket and dropped the small cassette tape into the flames. We've heard enough of the past, he said. Now it's our turn to speak. The fire crackled. Sparks reached upward like prayers. And for the first time in years, the silence between them wasn't hollow. It was healing. A space where something new could finally grow. Later, Ava sat with her journal, under the same stars that used to scare her as a child. So wide, so far. But now, they felt like witnesses. She wrote, "Forgiveness isn't something they earn. It's something we survive by." She paused, then wrote again. He didn't say it right, but he tried. And sometimes trying has to be enough. She closed the journal, looked up. The wind brushed past her, soft and cool. For the first time she didn't feel hopeless. Not because the wounds had healed, but because she had stopped pretending they didn't exist. Hope wasn't a scream. It was a whisper. And tonight, in the dark, she could finally hear it. Ava visited their childhood home one last time before handing over the keys. The living room felt smaller now, less haunted. The walls no longer echoed. They listened. She sat on the floor where she once built pillow forts and waited for a father who didn't come home. You were the silence I learned to live with, she said aloud. Then softer, but I don't need to carry you anymore. She walked room to room, touching memories like artifacts. In the hallway, she paused by a height chart Samuel once penciled into the wall. Her name, Lena's, Mark's, 3 lines ascending year by year. She smiled. You did mark our growth. Just not the way we needed. As she turned off the lights, she whispered goodbye. Not to the house, but to the girl who waited at the door for someone who never knocked. Mark was repairing his garage door when his son walked in, holding a broken toy. Can you fix it? The boy asked. Mark looked down. He remembered being the kid who never asked, because no one ever said yes. Yeah, he smiled. Let's do it together. They sat side by side on the cold concrete. Small moment, big choice. Every act of presence was resistance to the man Mark once feared becoming. "How come you always help?" his son asked. Mark didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I know what it feels like when no one does." His son looked confused. Mark smiled gently. "Just know I'm always here, even when it's hard." And that was it. The cycle cracked. Maybe not shattered, but cracked wide enough for love to leak in. Lena started writing again. Not in rage, not in defense, but in clarity. Her journal pages were no longer a battleground. They were bridges. "Dear Dad," she wrote, "I used to scream in these pages. Now, I'm just trying to understand." She detailed moments she misread, things she blamed him for that weren't his alone, but also things he did that still left marks. "I don't forgive everything, but I forgive enough to breathe," she wrote. She closed the book, feeling lighter, then opened a new page and wrote, "To my children, I promise to never let my silence become their inheritance." The pen trembled, not with pain, but with promise. Lena hadn't found peace, but she found the path toward it, and that was more powerful. The siblings gathered for one final dinner together before going back to their lives. No speeches, no apologies, just food, laughter, and something else, ease. For the first time, they weren't bonded by shared pain, but by shared healing. Mark clinked his glass. "To Dad," he said. They paused. Then Ava added, "Not to the man he was, but to the man he tried to be." Lena smiled. "And to the people we're becoming." The toast wasn't loud, but it was honest. The meal went on with stories they'd forgotten, smiles that didn't feel rehearsed. The weight was still there, but now it sat beside them, not on top of them. And when the night ended, they hugged without armor. Love didn't need fixing anymore, just choosing. Ava walked through a quiet park the next morning, Samuel's letter now folded in her coat pocket. She didn't carry it like a relic anymore. It was part of her. She sat on a bench and watched a father teach his daughter to ride a bike. The girl wobbled, fell, got up. "I'm watching," the man called out. Those two words struck her like thunder. "I'm watching." Words she never heard but always needed. She closed her eyes, let the wind wrap around her. "I'll say it for you now," she whispered. "I see you. I remember you. And I forgive you." In that breath, hope arrived, not in noise, but in stillness. Her pain hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. And from it, something new was born, a quiet grace that no longer needed to be proven to be real. Ava opened a memory box she thought she'd thrown away. Inside, a birthday card Samuel never gave her. It was handmade, simple. "To my brave girl." No signature, no note, just the cover. Her fingers traced it, slow and gentle. She realized how many moments in her life had been like this, almosts. Half-formed gestures, love that didn't know how to land. "You tried," she said to the air. "You failed, but you tried." And somehow, in that messy in-between, she found peace. Not because he deserved it, but because she did. Ava smiled. It wasn't a smile for him. It was for the girl who waited. The girl who survived the waiting. And now, the woman who didn't need to anymore. Mark took his son fishing. The same lake Samuel once took him to. Once. A memory he barely remembered, but never forgot. They sat in quiet, rods in water, birds overhead. His son asked, "Did Grandpa ever teach you this?" Mark paused. "He tried," he said, "but I didn't know how to let him." A long silence followed. Then his son leaned on his shoulder. "I'm glad you know how now." Mark blinked back tears. That was the gift. Legacy rewritten not in monuments, but in moments. Every act of love now was a small rebellion, a refusal to pass the silence forward. And in that lake, in that quiet morning, Mark finally caught something he'd never held before: peace that stayed. Lena stood in front of a classroom full of children. Her job as a teacher had always been about discipline, routine, control. But today, she sat with them on the floor. "Tell me one thing you wish grown-ups understood," she said. One child raised a hand. "That we get sad too." Lena smiled. "Me too." She hadn't planned it, but her voice trembled. "Sometimes we carry sadness that doesn't belong to us, but we carried it anyway." The children listened, wide-eyed, innocent. "But you don't have to," she said. "You're allowed to let go." For the first time, her teaching wasn't about lessons. It was about release. And maybe that's what healing really looked like: quiet truths passed to those still small enough to listen. They visited the grave one last time, together this time. No flowers, just presence. The grass had grown back. The stone was simple. Ava traced her finger across the etched name, Samuel Thomas Rivera. Mark whispered, "I wonder if he's proud of who we became." Lena answered, "He would be, even if he didn't know how to show it." They stood there, not to mourn the man who left, but to honor the one who tried, badly, imperfectly, and far too late. "He gave us pain," Ava said, "but also the chance to do better." Mark nodded. "He broke us, but he didn't bury us." And Lena added, "We did that part ourselves." They left nothing behind but footprints. And sometimes that's all the closure a grave can offer, the chance to walk away stronger. Ava's voice echoes the final thought in a quiet monologue. "Some wounds stay quiet until they raise children of their own, but they don't have to live forever. We choose what echoes. We choose what ends with us." Her eyes close. "You don't need to be whole to be worthy. You don't need their apology to be free." She opens her journal one last time and writes a single line. "He wasn't a good father, but he taught me how not to become a bad one." And that was enough. Her pain didn't vanish. Her forgiveness wasn't perfect. But she was no longer trapped in the pages of a story someone else wrote. She turned the page, and for the first time, the next chapter was blank, and hers alone to write.